Going on, everybody? And I'm here today to present you this video that I've been wanting to do for the past, I would say, probably week and a half now. And every time I thought about doing it, it's just for some reason I just didn't really have the motivation to do it. But after seeing a couple things today while I was at work, just surfing around the internet on my phone, looking up gaming videos and stuff. Yeah, I finally just got the motivation to finally do this video. And unfortunately, sad to say, this video might cause some controversy. I hope not, because I would think that at this point, even though it's probably not true, I would hope that people would be mature and respect other people's opinions, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. But if this video somehow makes the rounds for whatever reason, it might cause a little controversy, and you know what, that's fine. But you know what, I feel I have the need, and I want to defend this game. And should be no surprise because you're seeing the gameplay right now, but the game I'm going to be defending and why I feel it has been unfairly maligned is Ryse Son of Rome. Now, before I actually get into the reasonings of why I feel it's been unfairly maligned and to the general criticisms that people have given this game, I'd like to go over it briefly, just a brief summary of the game in case for some reason you have no idea what it is. Basically, Ryse Son of Rome is a launch title that is exclusive for the Xbox One, and it is basically a third-person hack-and-slash action game that is set in a Roman time period. And that's basically the gist of what the game is. Now, before I continue on, I would like to say that I'm not a fanboy of this game. On the contrary, I feel that this game has its issues. And I feel that this game could be improved in a lot of areas. At the same time, I don't think this game is as bad as a lot of people have said it was. And after playing through it twice, I did one regular playthrough and then I went on another playthrough on the hardest difficulty, I can now safely say that I feel it's gotten a bad rap, basically, in the gaming community. And it's a shame. I think it's a shame. Now, what are the general criticisms of this game? Basically, the main criticism that I've heard about with this game is that it's repetitive. It is repetitive and boring. Well, see, the thing is, what a lot of people fail to understand is that boring is subjective. Boring is a matter of opinion. What might be boring to you might not be boring to someone else. See, I feel that this game, Ryse Son of Rome, was made for a certain demographic. And that certain demographic is people who are really into action games, gore, and maybe they might be interested in the Roman time period. For example, there are a lot of fans of, say, the movie Gladiator, the movie 300, and even television shows like, for example, Spartacus. So, you know, maybe, just maybe, this game might be catered to that group of people. Now, you might not be part of that group of people, and that's perfectly fine. But don't sit there and try to pass this game off that, oh, it's boring. Since it's boring to me, it must be boring in general, and you should not try it at all or even experience it. See, I don't like when people say that. I really don't. It kind of irks me a little bit. Because I feel that everybody should try out a game that they're interested in. Regardless if they have to borrow it from somebody, regardless if they have to rent it from GameFly, or if you still somehow have a video store around, maybe. Maybe there might be a Blockbuster lurking somewhere, I don't know. Or Redbox when the next gen games eventually go to Redbox, whenever that happens, I feel that you should always try out a game that you're interested in. You should always try out a game. Because if you don't like it, then you know what, you spent a little money to try it out. Now that you know for a fact that you don't like it, now you don't have to worry about buying it. So it kind of irks me when people do that. It really does. Because a lot of people have even said that this game doesn't even deserve a rental. And after playing this game, like I said twice, that I've played through this game, I can't believe someone would say it's not even worth a rental. Like, did you just, like, play through the whole game hating it the whole time? I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. It really is. But, anyway, the other big criticism of this game, and it's a criticism that, you know what, holds some water. Basically, that criticism is that it's completely repetitive. From start to finish, it is repetitive. I can agree with that. Aside from the few times that you are manning a Scorpio gun, which is the Roman version of a turret, you're basically doing the same exact thing. But the problem with that argument against this game in particular is that I'm pretty sure Crytek wanted to make this game be as authentic as possible when it comes to the time period and the setting. And if you know anything about the time period that this game was set in, you would know that that's how they fought. It was mostly just hacking and slashing, using your shields, maybe throwing a spear or two, but it was mostly just the same repetitive type of combat. That's how they fought back in that time period. So, the repetitiveness of this game actually fits within this game. And, you know, the whole repetitive argument, to me, I can see where it works sometimes, but I can also see sometimes where it doesn't work. For example, one of my favorite games of all time on the Super Nintendo is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. As much as I love that game, and I can play that game any day of the week and have a blast, that game is the definition of repetitive. You're basically doing the same thing throughout the entire game. You're mostly just, aside from jumping around, you're mostly just pressing the attack button the entire game. Wouldn't that classify as repetitive? But yet that game is revered. That game is beloved. But Ryse Son of Rome gets trashed. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Especially when, once again, they're trying to make this game authentic, so you have to include the authentic Roman combat, which is repetitive. It's just the way it is. Now, as far as the actual combat in general that's in the game, another complaint people have is that, it's basically just the same old tired executions over and over and over again. And to a point, that is correct. However, what a lot of people have failed to mention is that you can buy different executions. And there are many, many different types of executions. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I would probably say I've seen at least probably 18 to 20 different types of executions in the game. And that's not including the environmental executions that you can do depending on if you're sitting on a ledge, or if you're near like a fire pit, or like a spike, a trap, or whatever. So, in a way, yeah, you do kind of see the same executions a lot in the game. And that's mostly the fault of Crytek, because you don't really get to choose what execution you do in the game, aside from, like I said, if you're near a certain environmental hazard. Then that type of execution will always happen. Or if you say you shield bash before you go to execute, then a certain group of executions will always start. So it's the fault of Crytek that you don't get to choose what execution you do. But to sit here and act like that they didn't put any variety of executions in the game is false. Because they did. It's just that they don't give you really a choice to pick which execution you really want to use. See, what I think they should have done was have a customizable option where you can see what the executions are, and then say like equip it to your character, so that your character will always do your favorite executions. Honestly, I think that could have worked. But once again, that's hearsay. And as far as the executions go, they once again they fit what they were going for in the game. They were extremely brutal. Some made me flinch a little bit. It's like, oh god, that was really damn. That's all I can really say about some of the executions that I've seen. So they did a great job, in my opinion, on actually showing off how brutal and gory the game actually is. Now, what was I going to say? Yeah, another complaint that people have had with the game is that there's no enemy variety in the game, that you're basically fighting throughout the game the same type of enemies. And it gets very boring after a while. And once again, that's true. You do fight similar enemies throughout the entire game. But once again, I'm going to reiterate my earlier point. They were going for an authentic Roman vibe. And when your enemy is the barbarian tribe, you're not really going to have a huge enemy variety because they're barbarians. They're pretty much the same type of person. They're barbaric. And that's how they fight. Now, granted, maybe I would have put in other different types of enemies in the game just to add a little bit of the variety. But to sit here and basically say that just because there isn't a huge variety in the game that automatically the game sucks and is boring, well, I don't necessarily really follow that reasoning, because a lot of games have similar enemy types and people have never really complained about that game being boring. Like, for example, a lot of the shooters that come out, most of the enemies you face are the same type of enemy, but yet nobody really trashes that game. And I'm not just pointing at any particular shooter in general. I'm basically grouping a lot of them as a whole. No one really trashes on that game, for instance. Here, I'll actually give you an example. Killzone Shadowfall. For the most of the game that I've played, you basically fight the same similar enemies, the Hellghast. But yet, I don't see anyone trashing on that game for being repetitive and boring because of that. So, yeah, once again, I really don't follow that reasoning, to be perfectly honest. And another major complaint with the game, and I'm going to completely 100% agree with people who've criticized this game based on this critique, is that the game is short. And yes, the game is very short. It's about, I would say, a little under 5 hours long. Because I played it for about 2.5 hours, and I looked at the campaign timeline, and I was over halfway done the game. So, yeah, what I would have done was I probably would have added maybe a couple more levels. Maybe in a different setting. I can't really say what I would have done exactly, because that's like a whole big thing I would have to think about. And I didn't make this game, and I'm not a game designer, so I can't really say for sure what I would do. But I probably would have added maybe a couple more levels. Maybe add a couple more enemy types. Maybe spice up the variety just a tiny bit. Not a whole lot, though. Because, like I said, that they were going for the authentic Roman vibe of this game. And if you've seen any of these movies and television shows, there wasn't a whole lot of variety. And there wasn't a whole lot of flash and flare. It was mostly just brutal. And this game nails it when it comes to brutality. And honestly, I can honestly say after playing through this game as much as I have, I didn't really see any, say, issues with the game in general. No technical issues. I didn't really see any bugs. There's really nothing wrong with the combat system. There's yes. I can't believe I forgot this. Everybody is complaining about that this game is loaded with QuickTime events. It is QuickTime Event City. QTE City. And yes, it is. The game is loaded with QuickTime events. Executions are basically QuickTime events. And anybody who knows me, and I've said this before, I'm not a fan of QuickTime events. I don't like them at all. Ever since I was first introduced to them, from memory, was the first God of War game, I have not liked QuickTime events. I don't care for them. I don't see why they're really needed in the game. I think a lot of times, developers could go a better way of doing certain things instead of QuickTime events. But the main thing I did not like about QuickTime events was that they come out of nowhere, and that you most of the time you have one shot, and if you mess up, you fail. Ryse is not like that. In Ryse, the QuickTime events, you set up when they happen. You determine when the QuickTime events happen. And not only that, you don't get penalized if you fail. That's right. If you fail every part of the QuickTime event during the execution still goes through, the enemy still dies, and you still continue on with the game. The only difference is that if you actually do the QuickTime event execution correctly, and depending on how fast you do it, the more experience points you get, and you get other bonuses depending on what power-up you have equipped. So, it's beneficial to try to do the QuickTime events as best as you can, but at the same time, the game will not penalize you if you fail at them. The only time when you really have to be on the top of your game when it comes to these QuickTime events is if you're playing through on Legendary difficulty. And to be perfectly honest, unless you're a real, I don't want to say a hardcore fan of this game, but unless you really like this game enough that you want to play through it again, like myself, don't really bother with Legendary difficulty because it is pretty challenging, which I think is a plus to this game, because it's got a challenging mode, but the regular game, if you put on normal, is not really too terribly challenging, so it caters to both audiences. But on Legendary difficulty, the game only gives you these bonuses during executions as if you do them as best as you can. If you're off by a little bit, even if you actually connect with the QuickTime event, if you didn't hit it quick enough, the game on Legendary will not give you that bonus. So that's really the only time you really have to be on top of your game when it comes to these QuickTime events. But at the same time, the enemy still dies and you continue on with the game. So I really don't see, because at first, when I first saw this game, back when they showed it off, and they talked about these QuickTime events and they showed them off, I was like a lot of other people. I was like, I don't really care for QuickTime events, and if this game is loaded with them, I might not be interested. But after playing through this game, I don't think they're an issue. I really don't think they're that big of an issue. So, yeah, I think that's about it when it comes to QuickTime events. And the other major complaint with this game that people are talking about, and this is the final one that I'm going to go through when it comes to the major complaints, is that this game, like a lot of next-gen games, and maybe this is going to be a trend when it comes to, actually now it's this gen, if you want to get really technical, the new generation of gaming. This seems like it's going to be a trend, because it's in a lot of these versions, is they're going to have microtransactions. And yes, Ryse Son of Rome has the dreaded microtransactions. But I'm here to safely tell you, you don't need to pay Crytek or Microsoft or whoever gets revenue for these microtransactions. You don't need to pay them a penny for these microtransactions. You don't need to use them at all, because the game gives you enough experience points through your first playthrough of the game that you can buy almost every execution and you can buy every power-up. That's right, because that's all the microtransactions are really for. You buy gold, in-game currency, and you can spend that gold on either stuff for multiplayer, which I will get into multiplayer a little bit later, or you can use that gold instead of your experience points to level up your single-player character. I played through the game twice, and before I even got finished my second playthrough, I bought everything in the game without spending a dime on microtransactions. So, yes, microtransactions are evil if used in a bad way. But at the same time, if they're completely unnecessary and you don't need them and you can just ignore them, then I don't really see it being a major deterrent of the game. I don't. I'm sorry. Because I know some of you guys really hate microtransactions. I just don't think they hurt this particular game. I'm sorry. So, now what do I think, and this is just me personally, do I think they could have done a better job in this game? One thing that I don't think people have really touched on, at least from what I've seen, and it's funny because I'm going to use this as a complaint against the game, is that there's not enough boss battles in the game, and the few that there are basically not very difficult at all if you know how to play the game. Basically, most boss fights are basically like this: hit with the sword, block, hit with the sword, block, or dodge roll, hit with the sword, and repeat over and over again until they die. That's basically every boss battle in the game. And it's kind of disappointing because I think they could have done maybe a better job in making these boss battles stand out. And I also think that they could have maybe added a couple more bosses in the game. I mean, it's just once you learn how the boss patterns go, and once you learn how to perfectly deflect attacks with your shield, which the game teaches you how to do, the boss battles are a piece of cake, even on the hardest difficulty. And even if that, the game has a focus ability that lets you freeze time, and that also helps you out a lot in the game. Well, a lot of times it's cheap as hell. And a lot of times I decided not to use it because I wanted to challenge myself. But it's there for people who need that extra help. So, yeah, that honestly, I was kind of disappointed in that. But honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think the game's single player is really that bad. I do think it's got its issues, like I've talked about. I think the story's not that bad. Yeah, it's a little cliche in some instances, but honestly, what really isn't nowadays? A lot of things nowadays are copied from something else. But you know what? If it's a good thing, if it's a good, solid story, who really cares if it's, say, a little cliche here and there? I mean, really, who cares? I personally don't care. If you care, then that's fine. That's your prerogative. But I think this game had a solid story. It wasn't your typical, like, Roman story that I thought it would be. It had a couple little things in there that I didn't see coming. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but the final act of the game is highly entertaining. And if you ever get a chance to try this game and you actually see the ending, or if you say look up the ending yourself, that final scene was really, really good in my opinion, really satisfying. But yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. But yeah, now I'm going to touch on multiplayer for a brief bit, because there is multiplayer in this game. Basically, the multiplayer in this game is basically Horde mode. Typical Horde mode that was really introduced by Gears of War 2 and has been since lifted by many, many other games. And this game is no different. Now, what this game tries to do is puts little sub-objectives in between each wave, and it puts them at random so that you don't always know what's going to happen. But at the same time, these sub-objectives are pretty similar. So at the end of the day, you're really doing the same thing for the most part. And like I said, it is co-op. It's only 2 players though. And you can team up with your friends. And you basically just do wave after wave until you complete the round. Now at the end of the round, you get experience points and you rank up. You start at rank 1. There's 100 ranks, which is going to take forever to get up there. The easiest way to do it is to build your multiplier, but even so, it's going to take forever to get up there. And you also get gold. And you can use that gold to, say, for example, if you've not finished single player, you can use that gold to, once again, like I mentioned earlier with the microtransactions, you can use that gold to buy upgrades for your single player character, or you can use that gold to buy upgrades for your multiplayer character. And they have little benefits here and there, and there's basically rare items. They're called booster packs, and that's basically what they are. They're basically booster packs like for the card games that have been out, like the Pokemon card game, the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, where you buy these booster packs and you don't know what's going to be in them. That's basically what this game is. You basically buy a booster pack of sorts, and you basically get a collection of armors, and you might get a sword, and then you get an item that you can use in multiplayer, like a recovery item or an item that rebuilds your focus. So, honestly, the multiplayer in this game, I don't think is the best multiplayer in the world. I do think it will entertain you for a little bit. It can probably get old after a while. That's why I think you should play the multiplayer in short bursts, like not every day, just here and there, every once in a while. You and your buddy want to go on and hack up a few barbarians and stuff. Because it's still a little fun. It just will get repetitive and boring after a while. But at the same time, you can also, if you do it the right way, you can keep it from not being that boring. Like I said, if you play it in spurts. So, in conclusion, and honestly, it's a shame to see some people that I actually like reviewing games on YouTube. Like, I'll give you 2 examples: Angry Joe and DSP Gaming, also known as Dark Side Phil. For the most part, I generally enjoy their reviews, with a few exceptions that both of them have done. I've generally enjoyed when they've reviewed games. And they both crapped on this game to the point where they said that you should not even rent this game. And I think that's kind of a travesty, because if you own an Xbox One, I think you should at least, if you see this game on sale, I think you should buy it, because it is the best representation of what the graphical capabilities are of the Xbox One. And I think it's an entertaining way to spend 5 hours of your time, especially if you're into this type of culture. If you say you like the Gladiator movie, if you like Spartacus show, if you like Roman combat, this game's for you. This game is for you. And like I said, I just think this game has unfortunately gotten a bad rap. Maybe it's because it's an Xbox One exclusive, because the Xbox One really isn't that popular because of what Microsoft tried to do earlier in 2013 with it. And I can understand why people would be upset about it, but I don't think we should take it out on the games and the developers of these games, because I think this is a fun game, and I think it's a little bit of travesty that this game has gotten the rap that it has. You should definitely at least rent this game. You should definitely at least rent this game. This game should definitely be rented. I know I'm kind of rambling now and repeating myself, but if you have an Xbox One, if you can rent it, go out and rent it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So yeah, that's about it. And I know I've gone a long while, but honestly, I think this really needed to be said. You can feel free to disagree with me. You can feel free to share your thoughts on the game if you've played it. Any comments are welcome. Any criticisms are welcome as well. So yeah, just let me know what you guys think, and hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all next time. Have a good one. Peace.